And this guy picked me up and he told me he would give me some drugs to have sex with him, so I went with him. And when I tried the drugs, it wasn't real. So I went to walk out the house. Well, he grabs me by this thing. I heard a high-pitched noise, and then everything went black. I suffered a stroke.
Pauline Stevens was raped that night. Paralyzed on one side of her body, she spent 2 months in the hospital after her stroke.
The first thing I did when I got out of there is I went and got drugs.
Stevens was addicted to crack. The drugs grip was so strong, she spent 8 years as a prostitute on the streets of Cleveland to support her habit.
I wanted it to be over like now so I can get high to forget about what I just did. But you know what? When you get high, you don't forget. You remember.
At times, she'd see more than a dozen men.
A good day, which is not a good day, but wow, a good 13, 12, and one night.
Stevens remembers a life of constant drama, always on the lookout for police, and never really knowing what was behind every car door she opened.
Even though some of the prostitutes didn't like each other, we still communicated on a certain level.
Warning each other of the men that preyed on prostitutes.
He might have tried to rape her, might have tried to rob her, might have tried to kill her.
The danger never enough to stop.
Once you get past the police and the rapists and the murderers and the sickos, then you get past that, then you got to go through the dope area.
The addiction was too strong.
But it got to a point where I couldn't take it. It just wasn't enough dope. It just wasn't enough. No matter how much I smoked, I still needed more.
Sadly, you can find a story like Pauline's on so many street corners in Cleveland. If you don't believe me, just go for a ride with Renee Jones.
Oh, there's lots of Paulines out there, hundreds.
Renee Jones takes us to an area in Cleveland known for prostitution. She could have picked dozens of streets.
When you get to that second red light, if you could turn.
Jones operates the only nonprofit in Northeast Ohio to help women like Stevens. She started the Renee Jones Empowerment Center exactly 10 years ago. Jones and 2 other volunteers run the center. It's open 4 nights a week. No staff, no compensation.
A lot of people look at it and they're like, well, these women don't just want to be there. But there's a story behind every woman.
And you only know half of the Pauline Stevens story. Fed up with the lifestyle she was entrenched in, with the help of her sister and parole officer, she got into rehab. But that only addressed her drug problem.
And I was just as addicted to the prostitution as I was to the drug.
She needed help, but there wasn't anywhere to go. Then someone gave her Jones's number.
I called and it was Renee. And she asked me could I come that night.
Stevens was the very first woman in the Project Red Cord program, designed to rescue women in the commercial sex industry.
She was determined to find help.
Jones and a counselor helped Stevens out of her life on the streets and worked with her on a plan to stay out.
She has been an inspiration to other women in the program.
She goes to classes 5 days a week and counsels other girls and women walking the same streets from her past.
And I say, but for the grace of God, there goes I. That means I can go back at any given moment if I stop doing what I have to do for myself to stay sober.
In Cleveland, Kristen Severance, The Ohio News Network.